How many times have you found yourself exhausted, no matter how much you try to keep up? Have you ever felt like you're swimming against the current, with the weight of the world pulling you down? Imagine trying to lift a rock that only gets heavier each time. Sometimes that's what dealing with certain people feels like. They slowly drain your energy, leaving you feeling tired and worn out. It's like giving and giving to a cracked pot. It'll never fill, no matter how much you pour in. Have you noticed people in your life who always seem to leave you feeling this way? Let's take a moment to think about how often we let this happen and the toll it takes on our happiness. Some people bring energy, joy, and positivity into our lives, while others leave us feeling depleted and drained. These types of people can subtly impact our well-being, making it harder to stay focused on what truly matters. We may not realize it, but over time, allowing these people to sap our energy can affect our happiness, peace, and even our sense of self-worth. That's why recognizing these individuals and understanding why they have this effect on us is essential for our personal growth and mental peace. In Stoicism, we learn that while we can't control others' behavior, we can control our responses. Epictetus reminds us that people are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. Understanding the nature of draining relationships allows us to choose how we respond, rather than letting ourselves be pulled down by their negativity. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom behind these ideas. In a deep, ancient forest, there stood a wise old tree, tall and strong, with branches that reached up to the sky and roots anchored deep in the earth. It had seen many seasons, weathered countless storms, and stood tall through it all. One day, a delicate vine sprouted near its base. At first, the vine seemed harmless, its tiny green tendrils gently wrapped around the tree's trunk, adding a touch of charm and color. The tree, always open to new growth around it, let the vine settle in, thinking it was just a small companion. But as time went on, the vine started to change. It climbed higher, its grip tightening, and its roots digging deeper into the tree's bark. What once looked gentle became a relentless force. The vine blocked sunlight from reaching the tree's branches, sapping its energy and weighing down its limbs. The tree felt its strength fading, its bark weakening. It began to wonder, was this harmless little vine becoming a burden? Days turned to nights, and as the tree struggled under the vine's hold, it realized the painful truth. In allowing the vine to wrap so closely, it had given it control over its own strength and health. The tree had to make a choice: continue giving its life to support this vine, or break free to save itself. With a mighty shake and deep determination, the wise old tree shed the vine from its trunk, freeing itself from the weight that had held it down. In time, its strength returned, its bark healed, and its leaves turned green again. This story is a powerful reminder for us. Sometimes, the people who seem harmless and even comforting at first may slowly drain us if we aren't careful. Like the wise tree, we must decide when to let go, reclaim our energy, and allow ourselves to thrive. Today, we're diving into 8 types of people who drain your energy, from the complainers to those who are never satisfied. Don't miss the last one. It'll leave you speechless. Make sure to stick around till the end, because our final type might be the one you hadn't even considered, but could make all the difference. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on our latest insights into Stoic wisdom and life lessons. Number 1. The Persistent Critic. Have you ever been around someone who always seems to find something wrong, no matter how well things are going? These are the persistent critics. They point out every flaw, every shortfall, as if they're on a mission to highlight what's lacking. what isn't good enough. For them, nothing is ever truly right. There's always a flaw to magnify, a problem to dissect. And being around this constant criticism, it's like carrying a weight you never asked for. Their words might seem like constructive feedback, but over time, this negativity starts to feel like a shadow, draining the joy from even the simplest achievements. Imagine your sense of self-worth as a candle. Each cutting remark, every unnecessary critique, is like a gust of wind that dims the flame bit by bit. Eventually, you find yourself doubting things you were once confident about, hesitating where you once acted with certainty. So what can you do? It's tempting to think, just ignore them. But when this person is close, a family member, a colleague, or even a friend, ignoring them isn't always possible. And honestly, it can feel impossible to shield yourself completely from their harsh words and opinions. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. The Stoics taught that while we can't control others' behavior, we can control how we let it affect us. When faced with constant criticism, instead of internalizing it, choose to see it as a reflection of them, not you. Often, the critic's words reveal more about their own dissatisfaction than any real flaw in what you're doing. Once you recognize this, set your boundaries. Picture these boundaries as a protective layer around your peace. Allow only the feedback that genuinely helps you grow and let go of the rest. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about knowing your own worth and refusing to let someone else's negativity redefine you. Remember what Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Often the relentless critic is merely projecting their own struggles. Protect your peace by seeing this behavior for what it is, valuing your growth over their judgment. Number 2, the perpetual victim. Have you ever had someone in your life who always seems to be a victim of some kind of injustice? No matter the situation, it's never their fault. They were simply caught in someone else's mess, pulled into a problem they didn't create. It's as if they're trapped in a never-ending story where everyone else is the villain, and they're the innocent character who just keeps getting hurt. Welcome to the exhausting world of perpetual victims, those who find their energy not in accountability, but in blame. Being around someone who consistently points fingers can feel like a slow drain on your spirit. They paint their lives as a constant struggle, never considering their own part in the equation. And before you know it, you're pulled into their cycle of complaint and helplessness, even if you have your own responsibilities to manage. Imagine this: accountability is a sturdy bridge that connects people. Every time someone fails to take responsibility, it's like removing one plank from that bridge. At first, it might seem harmless, just a few gaps here and there. But soon, those gaps widen and eventually the bridge crumbles, leaving only a chasm between you and them. The sad part: when the bridge is gone, rebuilding it isn't easy. The mutual respect and understanding that hold friendships or relationships together weaken, and all that's left is resentment and frustration. So, what do you do? Sure, the easy answer would be to cut ties and steer clear of people who constantly blame others for their problems. But it's rarely that simple, is it? Sometimes these people are lifelong friends, family members, or even colleagues. Walking away isn't always an option, and yet you can't let yourself be dragged down by their victim mentality. This is where Stoic philosophy steps in with a solution. The Stoics believed in focusing on what you can control. You may not be able to change someone else's mindset, but you can decide how you'll respond. It's not about ignoring the pain or frustration their behavior causes. It's about understanding it clearly. Don't fool yourself into thinking that one day they'll magically become accountable. A mindset grounded in blame doesn't vanish overnight. Once you see this behavior for what it is, the next step is to set boundaries. Think of these boundaries as a protective shield around your peace of mind. Just because someone you care about won't take responsibility doesn't mean you need to absorb their negativity. Give them empathy, but not the power to drain your energy. Respectfully limit how much you engage in their complaints. It's not cruelty, it's self-preservation. And if, after all this, they continue to invade your mental space with blame and bitterness, then it might be time to make a hard choice. Ask yourself if this relationship is adding or subtracting from your life. Because, as Marcus Aurelius once said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If someone's constant negativity is affecting that happiness, it's okay to take a step back. In the end, valuing your mental peace doesn't make you selfish. It makes you wise. And sometimes, the wisest choice is letting go of those who choose to see themselves as eternal victims rather than participants in their own lives. Number 3. The chronic complainer. Do you have someone in your life who seems to find a cloud in every silver lining? Enter the chronic complainer. This person sees the world through a lens of negativity, constantly voicing dissatisfaction and never quite able to see the brighter side of things. Their complaints are like a never-ending soundtrack, filling the air with discontent and draining the energy from everyone around them. Being around a chronic complainer can feel exhausting. Every time you interact, you brace yourself for a litany of grievances about work, relationships, or even the weather. It's as if they've made it their mission to highlight everything that's wrong in their lives, and somehow you become the unwilling audience. Over time, this can leave you feeling weighed down, as though you're carrying the burden of their dissatisfaction. Imagine your optimism as a balloon. Every complaint they share is a small pinprick, slowly deflating that balloon until it's flat and lifeless. You start to question your own outlook, wondering if you should be more cautious or if there's something you're missing. It's a heavy toll to pay just to maintain a relationship. So, what can you do about it? The instinct might be to suggest solutions, to offer advice, or to change the subject. But chronic complainers often resist these efforts. They're not looking for solutions. They're looking for sympathy, for validation of their struggles. And therein lies the challenge. This is where Stoic philosophy can offer valuable insight. The Stoics teach us that while we can't control how others choose to see the world, we can control our response. Acknowledge that their complaints are their choice, but don't let them dictate your mood. Recognize that you have the power to maintain your own perspective. Once you see the complainer's behavior for what it is, consider setting gentle boundaries. Politely redirect conversations to more positive topics, or limit your exposure to their negativity. You're not abandoning them, you're prioritizing your own mental well-being. Remember, as Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Surround yourself with positivity and don't allow a chronic complainer to overshadow your joy. Life is too precious to be caught in a cycle of endless complaints. Number 4. The drama seeker. Have you ever encountered someone who thrives on chaos and conflict? Meet the drama seeker. This person seems to have a magnetic pull towards crises, constantly creating or amplifying situations that stir up tension. For them, life without drama feels dull, and they often find themselves at the center of tumultuous events, feeding off the emotional energy that erupts from these scenarios. Being around a drama seeker can feel like living in a reality show. Every conversation becomes an episode filled with high stakes, emotional upheaval, and unexpected plot twists. They tell tales that are often exaggerated, drawing you into their whirlwind of chaos, leaving little room for peace. You may find yourself walking on eggshells, wondering what new drama will unfold today. Imagine your mental space as a tranquil pond. Each dramatic story is like a stone thrown into the water, creating ripples that disturb the stillness. Before you know it, the calm pond becomes a churning sea, filled with anxiety and unease. It's draining, and it can take a toll on your emotional well-being. So, how do you handle a drama seeker? The easy path might be to avoid them entirely, but what if they're family or close friends? Cutting ties isn't always an option, and that's where it gets complicated. This is where the wisdom of Stoicism can offer clarity. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we respond to them. When faced with the chaos of a drama seeker, take a step back and assess the situation. Recognize that their need for drama often stems from their own insecurities and restlessness. Once you understand this, consider setting clear boundaries. Engage with them on your terms. It's okay to express your discomfort with constant drama and suggest more constructive conversations. By doing this, you're not only protecting your peace, but also encouraging them to reflect on their choices. As Marcus Aurelius wisely noted, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Stay anchored in your own reality, and don't let the storm of a drama seeker disrupt your tranquility. Choose to surround yourself with positivity and emotional stability. Life is too short to be swept away in someone else's chaos. Number 5. The Chronic Critic. Do you have someone in your life who seems to have a sharp eye for flaws? Meet the Chronic Critic. These individuals are quick to judge, always ready to point out what's wrong rather than what's right. Their feedback often feels more like an attack than a constructive comment, leaving you second-guessing your choices and abilities. Being around a chronic critic can be exhausting. Every accomplishment is met with scrutiny, every effort dissected until it's rendered insignificant. It's as if they thrive on finding fault, turning even the smallest mistakes into grand failures. You might start to feel like a performer on a stage, always anxious about what the next critique will bring. Imagine your self-esteem as a plant. Each criticism is like a drop of poison, slowly leaching the vitality out of it. Over time, those withering comments can make you question your worth, your skills, and your very identity. What was once a flourishing confidence can quickly become a wilted shadow of its former self. So, what can you do when faced with a chronic critic? The easy answer might be to simply avoid them. But what if they're family or co-workers? It's not always that straightforward. You can't just cut them out of your life without consequences. Here's where Stoic philosophy provides guidance. The Stoics teach us that we can't control what others say, but we can control how we respond. When you encounter criticism, pause and reflect. Is their feedback rooted in truth, or is it merely their perspective? Often, a chronic critic projects their own insecurities onto others, using criticism as a shield against their shortcomings. Once you recognize this, it's essential to set boundaries. You have the right to protect your mental well-being. When criticism comes your way, respond calmly and assertively. You might say, "I appreciate feedback, but I'm also proud of my accomplishments." This way, you affirm your worth while encouraging them to reconsider their approach. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Choose to rise above the noise of a chronic critic. Surround yourself with people who uplift and inspire you, who celebrate your successes instead of diminishing them. Life is too precious to be caught in a cycle of endless judgment. Number 6. The Pessimist. Have you ever met someone who seems to see the glass as perpetually half empty? Meet the Pessimist. This individual has a unique ability to find negativity in even the most promising situations, often expecting the worst outcome possible. Their outlook can cast a shadow over every conversation, leaving you feeling drained and discouraged. Being around a pessimist can feel like walking through a fog. Each time you share good news or a hopeful idea, they quickly counter it with reasons why it won't work. That's a nice idea, but it probably won't happen. Their words, while often wrapped in concern, can feel like a damp blanket smothering your enthusiasm. Over time, you may find yourself hesitating to share your dreams or aspirations, fearing the inevitable wave of negativity that follows. Imagine your optimism as a bright flame. Each pessimistic comment is like a gust of wind trying to extinguish that light. At first, the flame flickers, but with repeated blows, it can flicker out completely. You start to question your own thoughts and feelings, wondering if maybe they see something you don't. So, how do you cope with a pessimist in your life? The initial reaction might be to argue or try to convince them to see the brighter side. But this approach often leads to frustration for both parties. After all, their negativity isn't likely to change simply because you want it to. This is where Stoic philosophy offers valuable insight. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control what others think or say, but we can control our responses. When confronted with a pessimist, take a moment to pause and reflect. Recognize that their perspective is shaped by their experiences, often rooted in fear or disappointment. Once you understand this, consider setting healthy boundaries. It's okay to acknowledge their feelings while also affirming your own optimism. You might say, "I appreciate your concern, but I believe there's potential here." This way you validate their perspective without allowing it to overshadow your own positivity. Remember, as Marcus Aurelius taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Cultivating your own positive outlook can create a buffer against the negativity around you. Seek out supportive friends who uplift you and limit your exposure to those who drain your energy. Life is too precious to be overshadowed by someone else's bleak outlook. Number 7. The envious. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to cast a shadow over your achievements? Meet the envious person. This individual may appear supportive on the surface, but their jealousy often seeps through in subtle ways. They may not voice their feelings outright, but their comments and behaviors reveal an underlying resentment towards the successes of others. Being around an envious person can feel like walking through a field of thorns. They may congratulate you on your accomplishments, but there's always a hint of sarcasm or a backhanded compliment lurking beneath their words. "It must be nice to have everything handed to you," they might say, masking their envy with a smile. Over time, these little digs can wear you down, leaving you questioning the sincerity of those around you. Imagine your self-confidence as a garden. Each achievement is a flower blooming brightly, but every envious remark is like a weed creeping in, threatening to choke the life out of your garden. You start to doubt yourself, wondering if perhaps you didn't deserve your success, or if your achievements are less worthy than they seem. So, how do you deal with someone who is envious? The first instinct might be to brush off their comments or to downplay your successes, but doing so only reinforces their negative behavior. Instead, embrace the teachings of Stoic philosophy, which remind us that we cannot control how others feel, but we can control how we react. When faced with envy, take a moment to pause and assess the situation. Recognize that their jealousy often stems from their own insecurities and fears. Rather than allowing their negativity to affect you, choose to respond with grace. Acknowledge their feelings without letting them dictate your self-worth. You might say, "I'm grateful for my journey and the hard work that brought me here." By affirming your achievements confidently, you not only protect your self-esteem, but also create an opportunity for growth. Sometimes, envious individuals need to see that success isn't a zero-sum game. Encourage them to pursue their passions and celebrate their potential. Remember what Epictetus taught. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Surround yourself with those who uplift and inspire you rather than those who bring you down. Life is too precious to be clouded by the envy of others. Choose to flourish in your garden, letting your achievements bloom without the weight of jealousy. Number 8. The overly dependent. Have you ever had someone in your life who relies on you for nearly everything? Meet the overly dependent person. This individual has a knack for leaning on others, seeking constant reassurance and support in a way that can feel overwhelming. They often struggle to make decisions on their own and look to you to fill the gaps, creating a dynamic that can be exhausting and draining. Being around an overly dependent person can feel like carrying a heavy load. Their need for assistance doesn't just stop at emotional support. They may rely on you for advice on even the smallest choices, from what to wear to what career path to take. At first, it may feel fulfilling to help, but over time, this can become a burden. You might find yourself questioning where your support ends and their reliance begins. Imagine your energy as a wellspring. Each request for help is like a bucket drawn from that well. Initially, it feels good to provide, but soon, you start to notice the water level dropping. The constant need for validation and assistance can leave you feeling depleted, as if your own needs and desires are being overshadowed. So, how do you navigate a relationship with someone who is overly dependent? It can be tempting to simply give in to their requests, but doing so only reinforces their behavior. Instead, consider applying Stoic principles to guide your response. The Stoics teach us that while we can't control others, we can control how we engage with them. When faced with dependency, take a step back and recognize the pattern. Understand that their reliance often stems from fear or insecurity. You can be compassionate while also firm in establishing boundaries. Start by encouraging independence. When they seek your help, gently nudge them to think for themselves. Ask questions that prompt them to consider their own solutions. What do you think you should do? Or, how would you handle this on your own? These questions can empower them and foster growth. Remember, as Seneca advised, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. By allowing someone to lean too heavily on you, you may be enabling their dependency rather than helping them grow. Ultimately, relationships should be reciprocal. Value your own time and energy and encourage those around you to cultivate their independence. Life is too precious to be weighed down by someone else's reliance.